Welcome back to the Embodied Entrepreneur. Today, I have Jessica Addeo on the show, and I'm so excited, you guys. I had to cancel like last minute on this the last time, and I was so bummed, like for myself, for you guys listening, and for Jessica too, because I know she's a busy mama. She's got a lot going on, but I am so happy to be here today. Okay, so Jessica is an occupational therapist. She is also a nervous system, I'm going to say expert. Let's just go there. She is a nervous
Love it.
system expert. And we're going to dive deep into what the nervous system is, why you should really care that you have one, long-term, short-term, what do we need to focus on here? What could really make a big difference in your life and in your business? And since a lot of us are busy working moms or just busy professionals with lots of things going on, why this really matters. So, Jessica, I'm so happy that you're here. Will you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I am an occupational therapist, and for the first 15 years of my career, I worked solely in pediatrics. So whether it was in school settings, in people's homes, in private practice, supporting children and by extension, their families in doing all the kid things from developing motor skills to being able to go to a birthday party to being able to sit at the dinner table at a big holiday gathering, any variety of those things. I learned a lot about sensory processing and the nervous system and just how the human body works and how that impacts how you act and interact. And all the while, it never really occurred to me that all of that information applies to me as well, which is hilarious when I look back in retrospect because duh, of course, but it just didn't really land for me. And then I had kids of my own, and I have three little ones. Amelia is actually my youngest on my lap right now. So if you hear her cheering in the background, that's not me, that's her. Um, and so my oldest was born, and what it felt like then, he's 6 now, was, oh, I just need to exercise. If I exercise, then I'm a really nice mom. I won't lie, I was very focused on like losing that baby weight and doing the whole bounce back thing. And so exercise became a part of my routine in a different way than it had been before I had him. Then we went on to have my daughter Clara and my daughter Amelia. We actually had a loss at 20 weeks in between Jack and Clara. We did fertility treatments. And so I share all of that just to say I was sort of spiraling down in dysregulation as I tried to manage all of these things, all while still working and like being a human on this earth doing the things. And then one afternoon so now it's just me, Jack, and Clara. My husband was working his second job, and he called and he said he was running late. He was going to be late. He had to stop and get lunch, and his work took longer. And I had plans that night to go out, it is still atypical for me. I tend to sort of stay close to home more. And I have really curly hair, and it was wash day. And if you know about wash day, right, like you need an hour. So I had this irrational response of like, you jerk. How could you do this to me? Which in the logical thinking part of my brain, I was like, that's not fair, Jessica. But in the part of my brain that had worked all week and was solo parenting 2 kids all day and was looking forward to going out that night, that's how it landed. And so I threw on some ankle weights. I still have no idea how or why I did this, but I'm grateful it happened. I threw on some ankle weights, put Clara in the stroller, me, Clara, and Jack walked down the street to the basketball court. We're walking around for 10, 15 minutes, and I came back home. Now, in pediatric OT, we would call that a weighted walk. And I would recommend this to tons of kids and parents and teachers, right? If you have a student who can't sit still at circle time, or if you have a student who's having trouble like controlling their impulses or paying attention or not fidgeting, any of those, let them carry a couple of textbooks from room to room or have them push all the chairs in, give them heavy work. Well, I basically gave myself heavy work. And when I got back, all of a sudden, everything felt different. I could very clearly see that my husband had not done anything intentionally to me. He was out there working on a Saturday. I remembered I was meeting my best friend from college for dinner. we've never been on time for a blessed thing a day in our life. Like if I showed up on time, that would have been the weird thing. And this whole other part of my brain opened up because I had done occupational therapy on myself.
Mm.
And in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, is this like a thing? And the answer is yes, it really, really is a thing. And I got super intentional with it. Like, how else can I take care of my nervous system using sensory input? How else is my nervous system showing up on a daily basis, impacting how I'm acting, how I'm talking, the tone of my voice, how I'm feeling? Am I truly overwhelmed and stressed out and unhappy, or am I just dysregulated? And is there something I can do about it?
Oh my
And
gosh.
as I started gathering these answers, and the answer is I was 90% of the time dysregulated, and there is something that I and you can do about it. It became like my obligation to share this with other people, primarily women, although everyone has a nervous system, so you don't have to be a female. Um, Primarily moms, although again, everyone has a nervous system and we all have our own tipping points for that place where the overwhelm becomes dysregulation. And that is basically what I do now.
Oh my gosh, there's so much in there. And I think that story really, what it really stood out to me, what highlighted for me was that there there was a part of your brain that you could not even access because you were dysregulated.
Yep.
And just right there, one of the things that I know is that I like never want to limit myself as far as to what I'm able to do because I'm in my own way. And I do that with clients too. Like, don't be the reason why you limit yourself. You shouldn't be the one limiting you, right?
Yeah.
Well, nobody should, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah.
and so this is like kind of groundbreaking. So how what are some signs that you know that you're dysregulated? How will people
Yeah.
know?
So I look at it in terms of there's physical signs, there are thought patterns, and those are probably the two biggest places that I look, and I'll give some examples.
Okay.
Um, Physical signs, like for me, my jaw gets tight. The second that jaw tightens up, I am definitely heading towards dysregulation. You might experience things like a tightening in your stomach or a tightening in your throat. You might even experience things like GI disturbances because your nervous system is very connected to your gut and your digestive system. Um, it can also sort of feel like okay, so when you're talking really mean to yourself, there's likely some dysregulation going on. And there is definitely crossover here, right? If it is your pattern to sort of have this negative self-talk, and that's the response you pull up when you're experiencing a flood of stress, yes, your brain's going to pull that response up more automatically, but it is still telling you that you're dysregulated. So a lot of times it's like, let's get the sensory input in. Let's get the nervous system awareness in. And then let's really, really work to rewire those autopilot responses and understand them and where they came from. Because your nervous system exists to keep you safe and alive. So anytime you are dysregulated, that's normal. Sometimes you should be. I get dysregulated all the time. The goal is not for you to walk around like this Zen, calm master of your universe. The goal is for you. I was talking about it with someone yesterday, and we were saying like being regulated means you're not reactive. It means you like see your stressors, both internal and external. You witness them for what they are, and then you feel like you have a framework to understand what's happening and what to do to support yourself in coming back to regulation, however that happens. And I used to get so frustrated when I would hear the phrase or the terms that are like, you want to respond, not react.
Mhm.
And I'd be like, that's like makes great sense in theory. I'm totally on board. But when my baby's screaming and my big kids are fighting and my husband's trying to tell me a full-blown story at the same time, how am I supposed to respond and not react? And the truth is, you're not. You're supposed to go, I'm dysregulated. This is dysregulating. It makes sense. Here's what I can do to support myself.
Yeah.
And the physical signs and the thought pattern signs, they do change from person to person. Some thought patterns that come up a lot in dysregulation are sort of this all or none thinking. So
Mhm.
when it's like, he never comes home on time and I never get to go out and I never get to wash my hair, when it's this, everything is awful and everyone's the worst and it's always that way and it's never going to get better, I'm pretty confident saying that you're dysregulated. Another dysregulation, like trademark in your thoughts, is feeling guilty. So when it's like, I'm the worst, I should have done this, I should have done that. Should's another word I pay a lot of attention to. Um, to me, that's a sign of dysregulation. And there's actual, like, if you look into polyvagal theory, there's research to support that some of these words and some of this thinking pattern, they're a part of specific states in your nervous system.
Oh, wow. This is incredible. Okay, I just want to back up real quick. And when
Yeah.
you talk about sensory input, can you explain, just in case people are like, yeah, they kind of get it, but just to make it more concrete, what is
Yeah.
that?
So this is my, like I call it my secret sauce. There's definitely other occupational therapists in this space doing this work, and it's their secret sauce too. But it's definitely what stands us apart from, there's many individuals who work with the nervous system, all of whom are very talented, but this is unique to occupational therapy.
Okay.
And so sensory input is any information that your body is taking in from the external world, in addition to information it takes in from your internal world. So most of us think about sight, taste, touch, sound, and smell. And we each have different thresholds for how much of those types of input feel good to us, and then how much is too much. There's no right or wrong here. My husband's a super social, super loud guy. He works in a middle school and it couldn't be a better sensory match for him, right?
Right.
Like, give him fluorescent lights, give him kids walking all around and announcements and stuff all over the walls. I used to work in that very same school as him. It couldn't be a worse match for my nervous system. Those thresholds are too high for me. We both can be regulated. We both have great nervous systems, but just different thresholds. So one piece of what I do is helping people understand that and then leaning into things that you're likely already doing, right? If you are overwhelmed by sound, you likely turn down the radio before you park your car.
Mhm.
You're already making these accommodations, but when you know why you do what you do, then you get to choose it proactively, and there's a lot of power in that. But then there are these other systems that maybe people are learning more about them now. I hope so. But they're called proprioception, vestibular, and interoception. And in a nutshell, they tell you about where your body is in space. Your nervous system exists to keep you safe and alive. So I often use the example of being chased by a bear in the woods, right? If a bear was chasing me in the woods, my system would decide, am I going to fight that bear? Am I going to run from that bear? Am I going to freeze and sort of play dead? Or am I going to shut down and just be like, eat me, bear,
Mhm.
have your way with me?
Mhm.
And your proprioception, your vestibular, and your interoception tell you about where you are in space. Really important if you're faced with a bear in the woods. Um, what happens is we start to think like emails from our boss or our kids' school are the bear in the woods. And that's when some of this nervous system dysregulation can show up. Proprioception is input into your joints and muscles. So anytime you push a stroller, when I threw on those ankle weights, that's all proprioceptive input. It releases serotonin. I think we're all pretty familiar with serotonin. It makes you feel good, right? So proprioception is a really safe input for you to play around with. Vestibular is about where your head is in space. So literally changes in head position. As we age, if we don't use this system, the fluid that literally comprises the organs of this system will start to thicken and you will experience balance difficulties,
Mhm.
right? So this makes a lot of sense with the aging population. You can stimulate your vestibular system by rocking, by putting your heads upside down, by hopping on the swing next to your kiddo, by going on a roller coaster. There's all different ways, and this is really what I do when I work with people, is sort of like unpack, what does your system like? How can we give it what it needs at the appropriate amount for you and in ways that like actually fit in with your daily life?
Yeah.
Um, and interoception is how you know what's happening in your body. Am I hot? Am I cold? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? When I hear someone say, I forget to eat until 3 p.m. and then I'm starving, that's a very sensory red flag for me that their body and their brain aren't in clear communication, and that's going to contribute to feeling dysregulated.
Okay, I'm interrupting this podcast really quick because I'm so excited to tell you about my Mindset Mastery digital library. This is finally like that Netflix for your mind that you've been looking for, and you can actually feel good binging. This is an ever-growing library of quick EFT tapping videos designed to help you to reprogram your subconscious mind so that you get more of what you want. Inside this library, you're going to have instant access on demand to tapping videos like tapping into abundance, releasing self-sabotaging behavior, letting go of resistance, welcoming in success, creating a vision for success, protecting your energy, selling with confidence, tapping to get shit done, how to take radical responsibility, and audios like the learning state, which is a powerful mindset state where you can't experience negative emotions and therefore you get to show up in a more empowered state. Plus, there's one monthly group coaching call every single month for you to come in, ask your questions, and get support from me and the other members inside the group. Best of all, we're going to be adding videos every single month, and coming in June of 2024, even more subconscious tools, including hypnosis tracks and subliminal recordings will be uploaded as well. This library is going to get more and more valuable as I add more and more videos throughout the year. So you want to join now as it's the lowest price it will ever be. Dream big because it's all happening for your highest good on your timeline or sooner. And if you are a loyal subscriber to this podcast, head to the show notes because you get a special discount to join the library today. Wow, that is awesome. I'm glad I asked that question because there's so much more to it. And another thing that I find that's just very I guess reassuring is that you said you can do things like rocking, like where I actually rock a lot in my chair because it moves, it spins.
Yeah.
And going on a roller coaster. Man, I love roller coasters. So I'm like, good, this is good for me. These are things that you
Yeah.
can fit into your everyday
Yep.
life, so it's not,
Totally.
yeah, okay. This is brilliant. Okay, so I have literally so many questions. I'm going to try to keep it moving, but maybe we'll have a repeat session. Like,
I would love that. My favorite topic to discuss.
oh
So
my gosh, I
anytime.
know. Okay, so so everybody listening, go follow Jessica because it's very like bite-sized, very applicable, clear, and understandable. Little bits of information and stories, which I love. So one of the things you talk about is sensory snacks versus meals.
Yes.
If you are, I know, right? They're the best. And if you are a busy person, let's just
Yep.
keep it at person because yes, we do work with a lot of women moms, but if you're a busy person and you think
Yeah.
you need like 2 hours to regulate your nervous system, can you like set that straight? How do we use snacks
Yep.
versus meals?
Yes, you definitely don't need 2 hours. And snacks and meals refer to sensory input, not necessarily food, although food can make up snacks and meals that also help your nervous system. But a sensory meal is a larger dose of sensory input that's going to last a longer length of time. A sensory meal is really, really helpful and supportive when you are trying to move back into a regulated state. So you have become so overwhelmed, so dysregulated, so stressed out that you are in your fight, flight, or freeze response. A sensory meal will be most effective in shifting you back to regulation or inside your window of tolerance, and keeping you there longer. Sensory snacks are shorter, less intense versions of sensory input that help you maintain your regulated state. You can also use a sensory snack when you don't have time for a sensory meal. And
Mhm.
so I think not that there's a linear process here, but I think step one is figuring out like, what is my nervous system and sensory system like? What are the things that encourage me to get regulated and stay regulated? Then from there, like, how can we play around with the intensity, right? So I am someone who has a sensitive vestibular system. I would never go on a roller coaster. Whenever I see that scene in Elf when he's like stepping onto the escalator and his legs spread because he just can't like propel himself forward,
Yeah.
I feel very seen because that is me. Um, but I still need vestibular input, but I need it paired with proprioception, right? So for me, jumping on a trampoline like an adult rebounder is super supportive for my nervous system. Some days I do a full workout. It's 20, 30 minutes. it's amazing. I feel great. Other days, none of my three children sleep overnight, and that's just like not a viable option. So what do I
Mhm.
do instead? I habit stack a quick jump on the trampoline every time I throw in a load of laundry.
Oh,
And
great.
so that's sort of the way I play around with it. And again, there's all different ways. Like crunchy and chewy snacks are really, really supportive to a nervous system. Drinking your smoothie through a straw will give you a little bit of proprioceptive input. Chewing gum, wearing certain types of clothing. Like it's hard for me to give blanket statements because it's so individualized. But once you understand what your systems need, the sky's the limit. And as an OT, this is another, I would call it a part of my secret sauce, that we are really well versed in what's called activity analysis. So I do an exercise where I'm like, I want you to text me literally all day. Tell me everything you're doing. No one has to do this, but I encourage it.
Yeah.
We're going to see where dysregulation is showing up for you. And then in real time, problem solve how you can layer sensory input. And you don't have to do anything extra. The last example I'll sort of give just to like drive this point home, I had a mom who was like, Jessica, don't tell me to get up before my kids and work out. Please don't do it. And I was like, that's fine. You don't have to, right? Like that's not for everyone, and that's completely fine. But she wears ankle weights during her morning routine. Brilliant. She's getting that proprioceptive input. She's doing stuff she's already doing, and it works. Another mom had a lot of anxiety around nap time. Her toddler was like moving away from the nap, but the nap time was her time, just like all of that, like,
Mm.
how's this gonna
Been
go?
there. Yeah.
Yes. So she would lay on in tummy time. She would rock the toddler in her rocking chair, get a little vestibular. And then instead of laying on her back where she gets a little less input, she rolled over onto her belly, did some tummy time while her toddler either did or did not fall asleep. And she had enough coping chemicals to handle it no matter the outcome. So it's little things like that that make a big, big difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I love that you said so individual,
Yeah.
which is actually that should come as hopeful for people because if you hear though the advice that does not resonate with you and you know that's just not for me, or at least not right now,
Yes.
but it's being presented in a way that's like, this is what you have to do, this is just the way to do it. Hearing you talk about this and be like, no, we can come up with like, I will help you come up with a plan that works for
Yep.
you is just so
That's one of
reassuring.
the hardest parts of social media and
Yeah.
talking about this is that I never want someone to be like, so I should take a deep breath to regulate my nervous system. But for them, because they're in a fight response and their diaphragm is locked, taking a deep breath makes them more anxious. And so they think either taking a deep breath doesn't work or nervous system regulation is bogus. That doesn't work. And neither one is true. It's just not the right tool for the state that that individual is in at that time.
Yeah, you're right. With social media, we have very small windows of time and opportunity to get our information out just to at least even get people to register it, right? To become aware of
Oh,
it. And it
yeah.
is hard because we can't, and that's what it'll stop me a lot and just, well, this isn't the full story. Like I
Yeah.
get we're supposed to stop the scroll and I get we're supposed to, but it's not the full story. And so it sometimes I'm like, well, I don't want to say that because I don't want someone to get the
Yep.
wrong impression, which is why I love having a podcast where we can like
Yes.
go deeper into it.
Yes. I
And I
couldn't
know
agree more.
you also have a a webinar too that
Yep.
is like a longer form content that people can
Yep.
get.
Yep. So that webinar is completely free.
Yeah.
I've gotten lots of business advice to charge a small amount for it, and I just never pull the trigger and do it. So it's completely free.
Yeah.
It's an hour. You can listen to it like a podcast. You can sit and watch it. It goes into all of this in a bit more detail. And there's a ton of suggestions around like, do this for proprioception, do this for vestibular. The feedback that I always get from that webinar is I walked away with like tangible tools just in that 1 hour. And that's why I'll never charge for it, I think, because I want, if nothing else, I want people to have access to that.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's like another way that people can get even more
Yeah.
detailed, more in-depth information without
Mhm.
being like, do these 5 steps.
Yeah.
It's wild out there right now, especially
Yeah.
doing what it is that you do and even for, business owners and, mindset too and EFT, it's like this is a way to
Yeah.
do it for some people. And then some
Right.
people like, so yeah, I think you're doing a fantastic job of it. But
Yeah.
okay, I want to bring this back around to business.
Yeah.
So why do business owners not need to care, but what would it would be so beneficial for business owners to care about their nervous system? And can you tell us why
Mhm.
that is?
Yes. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is co-regulation. And co-regulation is spoken about a lot in the parenting realm, but you co-regulate with everyone, with your partner, with your friends, with your mom, with your clients, with your potential clients. And what that means is the mirror neurons in my brain are going to bounce off of the mirror neurons in your brain. That can look like around the holidays. I was seated in my car in the drop-off line. Um, we were listening to holiday music. We had 10 minutes to spare. It was cold out. I had decided I was staying in the car
Mm.
until it was time for my daughter to get out. And then the person in front of me opened their door and hopped out of the car. And my brain, via mirror neurons, immediately was like, we should get out. And I was opening the door when I caught it and I was like, oh man, look at that.
Mhm.
So everybody is sort of, your nervous system, again, it exists to keep you safe and alive. And a part of that is knowing what's happening around you, and mirror neurons bounce off of each other. So as a business owner, if you hop on a sales call and you are so panicked because sales feel hard for you, or because you really need to up your income to meet a bill in your personal life, like all things that are very, very real, your potential client would sense that within you, and it could make it harder to sell or harder for that client to feel safe. Um, and like we said earlier, your thinking brain goes offline the more dysregulation you have.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but if you've ever had that feeling like, I'm making breakfast and I'm thinking about any number, 25 things that I could choose to do, but I'm so dysregulated, I can't land on one. And
Yeah.
it feels like really swirly and overwhelming and like you're never going to get it done, that all or none thinking shows up. If I don't get regulated, it's going to be so much harder. Can I get work done? I guess I could, but I'm only working with part of my thinking brain. And so why wouldn't I get regulated first? I immediately become more of a safe place for my future clients and my present clients, and I have more thinking capacity. Like literally, my prefrontal cortex comes more online. So I can be more efficient and effective in doing the work that I actually have to do. So as a business owner, that's how I use it. And business is really dysregulating, right? Like the
Mhm.
ups and downs, the putting yourself out there, the imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
the all the different tasks you have to do, your nervous system's moving with you through all of that. So to me, it's just another really important tool to like harness your highest, best, most efficient self, which who doesn't want that in their
Yeah.
business?
100%. Yeah. And I was asked a question yesterday because I talk about using EFT tapping like before you go, just 10 minutes a day, like before you have a sales call, before you are posting something, because it gets you into that energy that is very, like if you're feeling worried about being seen or fearful of, judgment or whatever, but then you
Yeah.
can tap that out and get into a more confident, certain, and convicted place. Your
Yeah.
content's going to come across so much better. And
Good.
their question was, I mean, 10 minutes, like I won't stop to do that. I want you like, what if I don't want to stop and do that? And my response was, well, you're probably going to spend 10 or more minutes stewing and spinning and not taking action.
Mhm.
So you might as well do something that's going to get you
Yep.
into the place where you're going to
Yep.
take more action.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
EFT, from a sensory perspective, it's beautiful proprioceptive input,
Yeah.
beautiful deep-ish touch, depending on, what sort
Yeah.
of pressure you're using as you're tapping. And you're crossing the midline of your body a lot, especially if you're like, doing
Mhm.
opposite hand to opposite eye, which turns on both sides of your brain. Super organizing, super just like it lights up multiple areas of your brain. So EFT to me is a beautiful sensory snack. And if you do it a little bit longer, it could be a sensory meal depending on your threshold. So
Yeah.
yeah, big fan.
Oh, I love that. I love that perspective. So that is awesome. Okay, so everybody knows that's why we have to, care and
Yeah.
help. Um, I wanted to ask that just because it's like we can hear this, but if we're not connecting it to no, this is really going to make a lot of things easier.
Yes.
Parenting, business. I
Mhm.
don't know. There's a lot of crossover with parenting and business, right?
Yes.
I find I've gotten to be a better parent with being a
Yep.
better coach. The better I get as
Yep.
a coach, the better I get as a parent, and vice versa.
And I
Um,
don't talk about this too much because I hate playing on the fear factor.
yeah.
But if you let your stress and overwhelm run rampant, and if it's really like the driving force behind your life for years and years and years, there's very, very clear evidence that it has impacts on like your longevity, your immune system, your overall health and wellness. So I don't often come at it from that angle. Um, Gosh, because I hate playing to that pain point, but it is a real thing. It's
Mhm.
called allostatic load.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so if that helps motivate people more, then we'll use that too.
100%. Absolutely. As somebody who's like my dad passed away at like age 55
Oh,
from colon cancer, but it was very clear now me looking back seeing just this go 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 there, he was a product of a certain generation where of men where he was a football player and
mhm,
got to be tough and we don't he was actually fairly sensitive as a now if I can see that now, but I know that there were places where in his life where he was not able to express himself and I know that had to have been hard for him and
yeah,
coupling that with not taking good care of yourself and
yeah.
eating and then all of the
The
like
other factors.
all the
Yeah.
other factors like
Yep.
smoking, drinking, all of that, it all
Yeah.
adds up. That allostatic load is
Yeah.
a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is
Absolutely.
important, like again, not to like scare you straight, but just know that these simple things can help you. Like it seems like
Yeah.
it's hard, but they're simple to implement when you have a guide like Jessica to help you. So
Thank you.
um okay, I have two more things I've written down here.
Yeah.
The first one I'm going to talk about is anchored coaching certification. So, both Jessica and I are in anchored coaching certification for neurolinguistic programming, which that's the basis of it. And then there's all the different certifications, the hypnotherapy, the EFT, again, time techniques, there's life coach, success coach, all of that, and then NLP practitioner. So I have been dying to ask you this question from your perspective, being an occupational therapist and nervous system expert. What is your biggest takeaway so far, and how are you going to be, or how are you already integrating the two?
Yeah. So I found Julie through my business coach. Julie Costa is the one who runs Anchored. And I have been using her subliminal audios in particular to support my nervous system as I move through being postpartum and having three young kids. So movement is always my biggest sensory meal. But I had a very complicated birth with Amelia, and movement was just really limited for a long time. So Julie's subliminal audios supported my nervous system so deeply. And I always was like, gosh, I wish that there was something like this, but for moms or for parenting or just for stress in particular. And I'm sure that something somewhere out there does exist, but once you experience Julie, it's really hard
I
to go
know.
there, right? So I was like, I think I just want to learn how to do this and offer it to my people as well. And then in addition to that, there's this quote that floats around out there that's, using polyvagal theory, 80% of the fibers of the vagus nerve come from your body up to your brain. And then 20% are from your brain down to your body. So when that quote is shared, it's often with the emphasis on how important it is to um, include the body when you're doing mindset work or therapy or things of that nature. I'm totally on board for that.
Mhm.
However, I think the 20% of information that goes from your brain down to your body holds a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like it's mind and body, right? It's not like change your thoughts, change your life, or do sensory input and everything's better. It's you need both. And so I really, really wanted to learn how Julie does this for people because as a business owner, money is one of my biggest nervous system triggers, and her work has supported me so much in moving through that. So, yeah, that's why I'm there. And I feel like we're learning so much, as
Yeah.
you know. I haven't talked about it a ton because I think I'm like back end really processing, like
Mhm.
taking this all in and letting it wash over me. And I'm super excited to see how it does come out of me in my content and in my coaching as I make more and more sense of it. It is a science heavy program, which I'm a science girl at heart, so
Me
that makes
too.
my heart sing.
That is awesome. Yeah, because when you were talking at the beginning and saying how it's internal and external, the external stimulus around you through your five
Yeah.
senses, but also what's going on inside of you. And I was like, that sounds like auditory digital. That's what
Yes.
it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the quote that stands out to me from Julie, I always get the numbers wrong, but when she talks about like so many bits of information go in and
Mhm,
then your brain sort of filters through and it has like a couple of filtration processes.
mhm.
Um, and in my mind, I was like, but what about when like there's so much sensory overstimulation in your world that there's like higher bits of information? I don't even know if that's possible, but I know it can feel that way, right? Like when
Yeah.
you're a mom and you're cooking dinner and the kids are crying and the TV's on, like to me, I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of bits of information that my
Mhm.
brain is trying to siphon through.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like why does it feel like there's more
Yeah.
sometimes?
And I
Yeah.
think that to me, that's your sensory systems and your thresholds. And I think that it's you need both, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is so cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see how that comes through for you for sure. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was a quote that I saw in one of your posts, and it really hit me. And it was about the finding your why for doing this work. And what you said was, I want my kids to know that life is more than stress, anxiety, and frustration. And I was like, yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to boil down a why to that depth, that level. But you did that with that one statement. And I would just love to hear about this particular why. Is this the one that you have? Is this one that a client has shared with you? Um,
This is,
yeah.
yeah. One, I love that you pulled that out. You never know what people even like notice about what you post. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That is my deepest why. Um, I think our parent generation, and this is no shade or blame to them whatsoever. I don't know that this sort of healing was spoken about. And this sort of like, it was just like pick yourself up by your bootstraps and just do the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and when I first started working with kids, I had been a nanny for someone who was an OT. And I loved how it felt to work in her home. Um, I didn't know anything about occupational therapy. I just know that in her home, I felt so safe and
Mhm.
so loved and so supported. And so in my very young mind, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an OT because that's what this equals. Um, went to college, all of those things. And then you're working in a public school, you see kids for like 30-minute clips at a time. It's challenging in that
Yeah.
capacity. And I then changed to if whoever is with me for that 30 minutes, if I can give them that feeling, who cares about their handwriting? I mean, I care, but like,
Yeah.
that feeling, that's the thing that I'm after.
Mhm.
And then after shifting into becoming a mom, I realized it really starts with the parents, right? Because, and as we've learned from Julie, so much of your programming happens before the age of 7 subconsciously.
Mhm.
And so that's where that why comes from. I want my kids to know that stress, anxiety, and frustration exist. I don't want them to feel like everything's swept under the rug. I want them to know that you can recover from them, though, right? That life is not just like a constant cycle of, I'm so busy and it's so hard. That's there, but there are things you can do to come back. And in that place of coming back, like that's where you get to play
Mhm.
and be connected. And that's proven from a science perspective, but I also want to make sure the maps in their brain have a lot of space for that. So as they go out into their lives and navigate their world, um, they've got a pathway to go back to, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that, yeah, that is my absolute deepest why. And I don't nail it every day, like at all, but it's always the thing running in the background for me.
Yeah. I love that so much. So good. Like I know we could talk for hours and hours
Yes.
longer. I do have one last question that I ask
Yep.
everybody, and this is the Embodied Entrepreneur Podcast. So we have been talking about this pretty much the whole time, but what do you, as a business owner, a mom, as a human, hope to embody the most, and how do you do that every day?
That's a really good question. I hope to embody a sense of play and fun and like to be a place of like relief for myself, my kids, and any of the clients who come to work with me or even just see my face on social media, right? That
Mhm.
dysregulation happens and it's normal and there's nothing wrong with you and you can have the other side of the coin as well.
Yeah, that's so perfect. And you do that. Like every time your posts pop up on social media, I'm like, oh, I feel better already.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica, tell people how they can find you. Where do you hang
Yep.
out and what do you have going on?
Instagram is where you can probably get the best pulse on what I'm like and how I work. And my Instagram handle is just Jessica R. Addeo. I'm super creative. It's always my name. And then my website is again jessicaraddeo.com. And I talk a little bit more there about like my philosophy and my background. I think I've got a program video up top. And really, in either of those places, you can find, I call it my application, which sounds very exclusive, also known as, I don't have another name for it, but a
Yeah,
form that you can fill out that will let me know where you're coming from and how you want to talk to me. And then we can get together and talk about how this impacts you, what you might be interested in doing about it. As a business owner, I always get sort of stuck here. I have a program, right? And it has its structures, and I can tell you all about that. But the truth is, I make tailor-made programs for people
yeah,
99% of the time because everyone's needs and capacity and time frames and all of it are so individualized. So really, if you listen to this and you're like, ooh, I want some of this, all you have to do is reach out to me and we will figure it out together.
that's perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would recommend just like, let's just do a straight shot into personalizing it for me, right?
Yes, yes.
We're gonna do it, we're gonna do it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Everything will be linked in the show notes. Jessica, thank you so much for being here and spending your time. And I can't wait to see what you come out with soon. And you're not alone. Oh, precious. See, that's what
Oh,
we're
thanks.
co-regulation.
Regulation, that's it. We do it all day.
That we do. That's what we do.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all,
much
and I
for
will see
having me.
you. You're so welcome. I'll see you all on the next episode.